Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Beam third anniversary celebration community call. Before you're all going off to celebrate the 13 years of Bitcoin anniversary, the Bitcoin bar mitzvah, as we call it here, we will going to talk about Beam, the past, the present, and the future, and we're all going to have fun. So let's get started. So happy birthday to Beam and to all of us. And I thought it would be a great opportunity today to talk about two things. First of all, a brief overview of our last 3 years together. And then we're going to talk about the current status of what's happening in Beam, and most importantly, what to expect in the next year, this year actually, already 2022. So let's try to recollect how it all started. So it all started back in the crypto winter of 2018. And back then, Bitcoin was dying over and over again. According to this article, over 90 times Bitcoin was dying in 2018. And everybody thought it would be over. And then one man, known only as Kaiser Soze, managed to find a development team so clueless about crypto, they didn't know it was all over. And so they found a protocol hidden deeply under the dungeons of probably Hogwarts or whatever, called Mimblewimble. And then they found some garage nearby. And they set out to build the most private, most usable, and most scalable cryptocurrency ever, and they called it Beam. And indeed, 9 months later, on January 3rd, 2019, Beam was born and the mainnet was launched. And the sky of Tel Aviv looked like this on that very, very special day for all of us. Coincidentally, the same very day, Bitcoin was celebrating its 10th anniversary of the Genesis block. And I think it would be an amazing opportunity to recall a tweet from Hal Finney that was written, as you can see here, on January 21st, 2009, merely a few days after Bitcoin Genesis block was mined. And he was already looking for ways to add more anonymity to Bitcoin. Hal Finney, if you are probably familiar with, he was very famous developer and cryptographer, and he is known for as someone who has received the very first Bitcoin transaction from Satoshi himself. Unfortunately, he passed away in August 2014, and he's no longer with us. But even back then, in 2009, he recognized that Bitcoin needed more anonymity and tweeted about it. And this is what Beam is doing each and every day. Since then, 3 years have passed and a lot of releases. And also a lot of very strange sounding words were invented, coded, carefully tested, and then deployed into mainnet as a process. And unfortunately, we don't have time here to talk about all of these technologies that we have developed over these years. It will take probably much more time than we have today, but it was quite an amazing time. And of course, it was accompanied by beautiful and usable UI wallets for all platforms, desktop, mobile, and now web wallet, so that we could not only enjoy the complexity of those technologies, but actually use them in the real world. And of course, we also have very large and growing worldwide community. We're listed on Binance and many other exchanges. We're accepted in over 450 online stores and services. We have APIs, and we have a Beam Play platform for easy integrations into your stores if you wish. We have lifepack support. And of course, we have NFT gallery, very important, created a lot of buzz. We launched it as a kind of Halloween contest. Never thought about it too much, but now we have our own punks, and it's actually growing every week. And I will also talk about the version 2 that will be deployed later this year, which makes Beam today the best private by default cryptocurrency in the world, with superior usability and confidential smart contracts. And I stand by my words. And so now we are in 2022. So happy New Year, everyone. Glad you made it this far. So in this year, we will have a lot of interesting developments. And I would like to start with BeamX DAO. Last year, when we have launched our confidential DeFi platform, we called it BeamX. And we have also announced our plans to change the governance from the existing structure of Beam Foundation to the BeamX DAO. And for that purpose, we have created a new token. It's called BeamX, not confusing at all. And we have launched this transition with the goal to create a more decentralized governance for Beam going forward and to provide continued support and governance for the Beam ecosystem for the years to come. This is the idea behind the BeamX DAO, which is responsible and going to be responsible for the entire protocol. And the keys to success of the DAO is two things, in my opinion. First of all, is obviously engage stakeholders. And of course, we also need stable source of liquidity for the DAO so that the DAO can not only make decisions, but also make them happen and have enough resources to do so. And so we have started on this path, which is about to take 2 years, approximately, we hope, or at least this is our plan, during which we are going to switch from Beam Foundation Treasury, which is currently funding the project, to funding provided by BeamX DAO, of course, with the help of the community and the governance process in place. And this is what is going to happen in 2022 and 2023. And so with that in mind, last year, we have already started the first phase of this process. And it was staking of Beam to receive BeamX risk-free. We wanted to give our early adopters, people who hodl Beam and believe in our ecosystem, an opportunity to mine BeamX risk-free. And this is why we have launched this DAO core contract. And it was a huge success. Over 20 million Beam was staked. And by the end of this program, which is 3 months, so it will end on around January 21st this year, 1%, which is 1 million of BeamX tokens, will be distributed to the people who stake Beam in this phase. And so it brings us to phase 2, voting. So voting will be launched this month in January. And the idea of this voting process is to allow people to participate in taking decisions over several types of proposals. We have been publishing some articles about that, and obviously we'll publish a lot more when the voting contract will be deployed later in January, probably in a couple of weeks. But here I would like to provide a brief overview of what it means for you to be participating in Beam voting. So first of all, you will need to have BeamX tokens, which you will stake before each voting epoch starts. Voting is divided into these periods called epochs. Each period will last approximately 2 weeks. At least now this is the idea. And within each such epoch, your voting power will be proportional to the amount of BeamX you have staked into the voting contract. And there will several types of proposals in each voting epoch. So we will start from top to bottom, because this is probably are going to be the order that we're going to implement those proposals. So special non-binding proposals are basically opinion polls. So each proposal, eventually, if it is accepted, needs to be implemented. And it can be implemented either by on-chain mechanism, if such mechanism exists. For example, if we have some parameter in a DeFi application that needs to be modified, it can be automatically updated based on the result of the voting on the proposal. However, some proposals, such as deploying of new contracts or making modifications, cannot be implemented on chain. They require developers to do something or any other operation that cannot be done on chain, which is why Beam Foundation is going to facilitate these proposals, so it will making them happen, basically. And non-binding proposal is kind of equivalent to opinion poll. These proposals will be initially described and submitted to our forum, to the special section, the Beam forum, discussed, and after the discussions are over, they will be submitted to the on-chain vote, after which the proposal will be considered either accepted or declined, and then the facilitator will try to implement this proposal if it's possible. The second type is the binding proposals, which will be probably added later, which means that, of course, within the legal limits, these proposals will have to be implemented by the DAO facilitator, or whoever is responsible for implementation of this proposal. And then the on-chain proposals will also be divided into special and regular. Special on-chain proposals means that we modify some on-chain parameter, and we do it for a specific reason. For example, to adjust percentages of collateralization ratio, whatever the requirements of a specific protocol. And then there will be regular on-chain proposals, which means things that are voted on every epoch. This could include how the liquidity is divided, whether it is used for stability purposes or allocated as dividends and distributed to the participants in the voting process. So in order to be able to collect these dividends or any other profits accumulated in the DAO, if such will actually exist, you will have to stake your BeamX and participate in all of those proposals. And of course, at the beginning and the voting epoch, the votes are counted, the proposals are implemented, and the new epoch starts immediately. So this is happening in January. The next phase is about liquidity. And here, this is going to be, I think, one of the most interesting parts of February, I believe, because obviously we will need some kind of AMM DEX in order to facilitate trading of any token or confidential asset that we have. And obviously the BeamX pair is going to be probably one of the first and one of the most important, at least at the beginning phases of this process. And here we're looking into the approaches that are now kind of branded as DeFi 2.0, and specifically protocol-owned liquidity. So how does it work in few words? And please go and Google it if you don't, I'm not familiar with this, because it's a very interesting concept. So as many of you probably know, most of the DeFi protocols bootstrapped by doing liquidity mining, which means they have lended or kind of liquidity from liquidity providers, and in return distributed the governance token for the protocol. The problem with this approach is that once the distribution of those tokens is over, all this money can just move somewhere else. And this is what happens in most cases. Once this specific program is no longer attractive, people just take their funds and move somewhere else. And the protocol is left without the liquidity that it paid so much to attract and does not benefit from it long term. And even though it's like a very good way to initially attract a lot of liquidity to the protocol, it doesn't really work in the long term. So the idea of DeFi 2.0 and specifically protocol-owned liquidity is to try to overcome this problem by actually allowing the protocol to own this liquidity. And one of the ways it works, and there are several implementations that are currently trying to do this, is to allow the protocol to basically get back the LP tokens that it issued for providing the liquidity by providing additional governance tokens at discount, for example. And it's called bonding, for example, in Olympus DAO, which is one of the examples of the protocols that are trying to do something like this. And eventually, the DAO actually owns the liquidity inside its pools. It's not a simple process. We're carefully trying to think how to do this right. It should work in terms of numbers, incentive alignment, and everything else. But this is the way that we're currently trying to implement this liquidity acquisition phase. Because as I have mentioned earlier, our goal is to have Beam DAO own its own liquidity for long term and be able to use it to further develop Beam ecosystem. This next phase is bridges. And bridges is something that we have talked about for a long time. They're currently in the testing phase, and they will be deployed probably around the same time, February, March this year. And bridges allow us to bring additional liquidity into Beam from other networks, Ethereum at first and others probably later. And this means that we will be able to use not only our internal confidential assets on natively deployed tokens, but also bring existing assets from other chains. This is very important. Obviously, all of these applications generate fees for the users who provide liquidity into them or use them. So it's also part of the ecosystem. And then the next phase after that is stable assets, backed by collateral, native assets with price targeting through oracles. Even though we are moving probably some stable coins from Ethereum using bridges, we do want to have our own, eventually, our own stable asset on top of Beam. And once again, as you know, stable assets are currently the cornerstone of any DeFi ecosystem. They allow to hedge, they allow to fly for safety. They are very, very popular, and they create a lot of APY in comparison to other assets because they're very vastly used in many cases and scenarios. So this is the plan for the next month. Once again, all of these things are currently being designed, and we will publish more information about all of these phases as we go along. And obviously, we welcome any opinions or ideas that you might have in the forum or in our community channels. If you know examples of protocols that are doing something similar, even though what Beam is doing is kind of unique in a way that it's layer one that has a new token for the DAO, which is managing it. It's kind of unorthodox, and some people think that it's even a little bit far-fetched, but we believe it can work. So please let us know. And obviously, in order to make all of this to work, we need more features. And we will start from the recent release. And a lot of people expected either asset swap or IPFS integration for the NFT Gallery V2. But unfortunately, we had to make this release earlier because of two reasons. The first important one was because we wanted to launch our DeFi applications on mobile wallets, and we couldn't do that without some infrastructure support. So we had to deploy that. The second reason, which was not widely advertised, because it's not really operational yet, however, it is included, is the high frequency transactions. And I think it's a very cool thing, and I would like to tell you a little bit about it. So as you know, when you are trading in DeFi or even buying NFTs, it's very annoying to submit your bid or to buy something, try to buy something, only to discover that actually somebody bought it before you, or if you're doing some trade and you only know about the fact that it failed after the block is mined, which takes in Beam on average 1 minute, but it can be more. So you don't really want to wait that long. And right now, it's not really possible, it was not possible to do anything about it, because all of the transactions are sent from the wallet to the node, where they're accumulated in the mempool, and the mempool is just a list of transactions from which the miner basically chooses the most profitable ones to mine in the next block. So the high frequency transaction, which was developed by Vladi, is an idea to change the structure of the mempool basically from a simple list into a sort of a tree, and allow the wallets to understand what's going on in the mempool right now. And when submitting the transactions, they can know, even before the block is mined, which other transactions are there. And so the transaction can be positioned specifically in a certain order. And so I can know, for example, that there was some change that affects my transaction in the DeFi application, or even if somebody's trying to buy an NFT that I just want to buy. So I can bump my fees, or I can choose another NFT. I can make a decision before the block is mined. And from the miner side, instead of selecting just a list of transactions, the miner basically selects a branch in this tree where the transactions are in order. This also helps us with these kind of attacks on the mempool where there's a sandwiching or change of the order of transactions. So you know about that beforehand. It will both increase the security of those applications and prevent front running, and it will also make the decision making faster. And obviously, it's not up to the human to make these decisions too fast. So the applications that are implemented should take into account this possibility and act accordingly. And right now, this support is already built into our wallets and our nodes. However, it's not fully operational because of two reasons. First of all, it's not enforced on all nodes. Obviously, we cannot do it without the hard fork, which is why this functionality will be fully operational in our next hard fork, which will probably happen in around April. And also the applications need to be implemented in a way that takes advantage of this possibility. Nonetheless, it's going to be a major improvement, both to the speed and the security of our DeFi. 6.3 is the version that we're working on now. And it has two very cool features. The first one is the IPFS integration. So what happened is that when we have launched our little NFT experiment back in Halloween times, it became very popular and people wanted to upload a lot of works. However, our first version uploaded this data directly to the blockchain, which is not optimal because it blows the blockchain. This data cannot be removed using cut-through, and it's not a good idea to basically not scalable. So we have decided to integrate IPFS nodes into our wallets. So now you can upload these works directly by yourself. This is what version 2 of the gallery will enable you to do. And the data will go to the IPFS nodes. IPFS is basically a distributed file system. And then the metadata is going to the blockchain. So you will know who is buying what, you know what to buy using the regular application on the blockchain. However, the data itself is not in the blockchain, rather it's in a separate storage. And it works very smoothly integrated as usual into our wallets. You don't need to install anything in addition. Basically, everything is built in. And the second part is the decentralized application store, which means that right now we need to host some kind of a list of applications in the store. Of course, you can add your own zip files, which we have enabled in the previous version, but it's not optimal because you cannot distribute them in a decentralized way. And the D2 App Store, which is decentralized application store, will allow you to create and distribute applications using our SBBS system, sign them with your keys, verify them, audit them, and prove that they have been audited. So basically, all the necessary precautions, and then the applications can be distributed in completely decentralized way from your wallet, which in my opinion is very cool. And this is coming in the next version, 6.3, which means that the asset swap, which is our built-in marketplace for confidential assets, is being postponed a little bit to the next version, 6.4. Once again, these are the wallet features, not to be confused with applications. So for example, once the 6.3 is ready, we will be able to roll out the NFT Marketplace V2, where you can upload your works by yourself and everything is going to work through IPFS. However, these specifically relate to the wallets. And one of the things that we wanted to implement is kind of order book-based exchange, which works a little bit similar to our current Atomic Swap marketplace. However, it's much faster because unlike Atomic Swaps, which take time between the networks, these transactions are completely instant. You can exchange any number of confidential assets on Beam in a single transaction. Very convenient. And once again, it utilizes SBBS for the messaging and the broadcasts. So it's almost instant to publish an offer, and it can work as a built-in exchange for your asset. If you create an asset, you don't need to run and list it on centralized exchange. You can trade it either on DEX in Beam or through the asset swap feature. And then eventually, around April, we're going to have the 7.0 hard fork, which will kind of include all of these features, make the necessary changes in the consensus to support them, including high-frequency transactions and some other improvements that we need in the virtual machine for the applications. And this is going to be basically final kind of touches to this part of our development. One more thing, a little bit of a teaser. So on October 21st this year, Jonas Schnelli, who is one of Bitcoin core maintainers, announced that he's stepping down. And he created a thread in Twitter, you can read it. And one of the things he mentioned in response to the question why he's stepping down was that Bitcoin contributors feel legal risks and they're increasing and it can be stressful. And then he said something that caught our eye. New contributors should join anonymously. And then he said it's tricky. So we thought, wait a minute, since we already have the best confidential blockchain and we have IPFS integration now, and obviously we have SBPS, which is encrypted messaging between wallets since forever, and we have smart contracts, why don't we just build confidential decentralized development platform, which will have a Git repository built in, and it will have identity management, so you can choose whether you want to sign your commit as yourself or as somebody else, or just completely anonymously. And then we can also build into this platform DAO governance. It's very easy for us. We already have a DAO. And we can have a bounty platform since we have tokens on our platform right now on our blockchain. So right now, if you're copying somebody's code and you want to say thank you, you can just click like, but now you can contribute to this person. You can open bounties for issues or bugs without having to go to a third party. So I don't know how many of you are developing every day, but if you do, it's very annoying to use different platforms for all these operations. And so we're thinking about building something like this, and you will learn more about that. So keep looking for this powered by Beam icon everywhere. Maybe it will look different, but it will still be powered by Beam. And it's going to be interesting year. Thank you very much. And have a great year 2022.